Every day, people demand your reasons, your justifications, your explanations. Why you act, why you feel, why you choose. From family, friends, co-workers, even strangers online. They all want the same thing. A story, a rationale, a confession. And every time you provide one, something subtle happens. A small piece of your autonomy drifts away. You begin to measure yourself by their approval. You begin to live in reaction to their judgments. Arthur Schopenhauer warned that most human interaction is a trap. People rarely seek truth. They seek confirmation of their own biases, a reason to judge, or a chance to feel superior. When you explain yourself, you hand them the tools to dissect you, to manipulate you, to push your energy into directions that serve their ego, not yours. Every explanation is a tiny surrender. Every apology, every justification is a chip away at your mental sovereignty. Think about how exhausting it is to constantly defend yourself. You give explanations for decisions no one else could understand because your inner logic is yours alone. You justify your ambitions to people whose goals are trivial. You defend your values to those who will never share them. And in this process, your mind becomes a theater for others' expectations. Your life, once yours, starts to feel borrowed from those whose approval is fleeting and shallow. But here is the subtle, life-altering truth. The moment you stop explaining yourself, the dynamic shifts. Without your explanations, others lose their leverage. They can no longer debate, critique, or manipulate you in the way they once did. Your silence becomes a boundary. Your autonomy becomes visible because you are no longer negotiating it. It is a form of quiet rebellion. Not loud, not confrontational, simply firm, unshakable, deliberate. Schopenhauer would say this is not arrogance, but realism. The world is not obligated to understand you. People are not obligated to agree, and yet most spend their lives chained to this impossible expectation that the world must accept their reasoning. But freedom does not arrive through agreement. It arrives through detachment. Freedom arrives when you stop offering justifications, when you stop arguing with the inevitable misunderstanding of human nature, when you stop surrendering pieces of yourself for the sake of fleeting validation. In this silence, in this refusal to explain, you discover something almost forgotten. Your thoughts, your decisions, your life belong first and foremost to you. And everything else, the criticism, the judgment, the gossip, becomes background noise, irrelevant to the architecture of your inner life. Let that sink in. For the first time, perhaps, you are not living to be understood, but simply living. And that distinction, subtle as it may seem, is the beginning of transformation. Humans are social creatures, but Schopenhauer saw the danger in how this instinct binds us. The moment you feel compelled to explain yourself, you surrender to the tyranny of other people's eyes. They do not act out of malice. They act out of self-interest. They crave validation of their own worldview, a chance to assert superiority, a way to ensure you conform to their expectations. Your explanations become a currency in their economy of judgment, and in paying it, you impoverish yourself. Consider how often this happens in your daily life. You justify your choices to co-workers who will never take your perspective seriously. You explain your ambitions to friends who are secretly envious or complacent. You rationalize your desires to family members whose own fears and insecurities make them incapable of understanding. Every explanation is a thread in a web that slowly entangles you in others' priorities, doubts, and opinions. You begin to live not by your own rhythm, but by the pulse of the crowd, and yet this surrender feels almost natural. We are conditioned to believe that clarity and approval are synonymous. Explain yourself, they say, and we obey, as if our life depends on it. But Schopenhauer warns that the world is indifferent. People will rarely understand, often judge, and occasionally exploit your words. Explaining yourself does not win understanding. It exposes you to misunderstanding. It is a trap disguised as civility. Now imagine a different approach. Imagine responding not with a flurry of rationalizations, but with composed silence. Imagine carrying out your actions without the invisible need to justify them. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Silence feels like defiance. Others may push, prod, or provoke. But slowly, something remarkable happens. The power of their judgments diminishes. When you stop explaining, the arena of control shifts. No longer are you playing the game according to their rules. No longer are you providing the ammunition for critique, gossip, or envy. Your mind, once cluttered with the anxiety of others' opinions, becomes a private sanctuary. Schopenhauer would argue that this is not withdrawal or weakness. It is strategic detachment. It is an acknowledgement of a simple truth. The world does not revolve around your reasoning. People are blind to much of your inner life, and they will always interpret it through the lens of their own fears, desires, and biases. To constantly explain yourself is to attempt the impossible, to force others into clarity that they are incapable of. By stopping, you reclaim something far more precious than approval. Your time, your energy, your peace of mind. You discover the rare freedom of living without justification, of acting with integrity while remaining untouched by the endless, often petty, judgments of the masses. The world may still speak, criticize, and point fingers. But now, it no longer matters. Your focus is no longer on convincing them. It is on living your life on your own terms. The moment you stop explaining, you step out from the shadows of others' eyes. And in that quiet space, the first seeds of transformation quietly take root. Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to explain yourself repeatedly? To offer reasons, defend choices, translate your intentions into words others will accept. Schopenhauer recognized this as a subtle form of suffering, a psychological tax we pay willingly, often without realizing it. Each explanation is energy spent on someone else's understanding rather than your own life's clarity. Each justification reinforces a pattern, the world's demands above your own needs. This is the hidden cost. Your mind, your attention, your presence. Fragments of yourself are given away in the act of explanation. You become a shadow of your intentions, living not in your own life, but in the interpretation of others. Your confidence wavers when approval is withheld. Your creativity stalls when your ideas must always pass through the sieve of someone else's judgment. And yet, society praises those who communicate well, those who defend their choices, those who endlessly rationalize. It disguises submission as skill, exhaustion as virtue. But there is a quiet rebellion available to you. Schopenhauer would say, stop. Stop explaining. Stop defending. Stop translating your life into a language that satisfies others' expectations. This is not arrogance. It is liberation. When you release the compulsion to justify yourself, the mental load shifts. You no longer expend energy trying to align your inner reality with external approval. Instead, you conserve it for your own projects, your own thoughts, your own vision. The first moments of this shift are strange. People may be confused. Some may press harder, demanding clarity, questioning motives. And here is the crucial lesson. Their persistence is not your responsibility. Their confusion is not your burden. You are not obligated to explain yourself to those who cannot or will not understand. Your actions, your choices, your values, these exist first for you. They require no certification from the world. In this silence, a transformation begins. You start noticing the subtle relief in decision-making. Choices no longer require validation. Your ideas, once filtered and edited to appease others, can exist in their raw form. Your emotions, once constantly justified, can flow naturally without apology. Schopenhauer believed that a life constrained by the endless explanations demanded by society is a life half-lived. The other half, quiet, autonomous, uninterrupted, is available the moment you stop giving away pieces of yourself. And here is the paradox. While society may initially resist your silence, over time it respects it, not because it understands, but because it cannot manipulate it. Boundaries that are unargued are often the most unbreakable. By refusing to explain, you shift the equilibrium. The observer becomes powerless, the critic loses leverage, and your life becomes an internal fortress of clarity. So ask yourself, how much of your energy has been spent translating yourself for others? How many hours, thoughts, emotions have been lost in the act of justification? The moment you stop, you recover all of it. You reclaim space to think, to act, to live uncorrupted by the relentless demands of others' opinions. Freedom begins not with grand gestures, but with the quiet refusal to surrender your mind to explanation. In this stillness, you start living a life that is unmistakably, irrevocably yours. There is a strange law in human interaction. The less you explain, the more space you create. Schopenhauer understood this intuitively. When you stop offering reasons, justifications, and clarifications, you no longer feed the machinery of judgment that others operate, and the world reacts differently, subtly, quietly, but unmistakably. At first, some people will push. Friends, family, co-workers. They may prod, demand answers, or even accuse you of arrogance. Why? Because your silence interrupts the familiar rhythm of control. People are accustomed to measuring you, to positioning themselves against your words. Without explanations, they lose their foothold. You no longer exist as a malleable reflection of their expectations. You exist as a self-contained entity, defined by your actions rather than your words, and that is when everything begins to change. The critics, manipulators, and casual observers, those who thrived on your energy, gradually lose interest. Why? Because they can no longer extract leverage from you. Silence, in this sense, becomes a boundary more powerful than any argument. Schopenhauer would argue that it is not aggression or confrontation that establishes authority over one's own life, but detachment. By refusing to explain, you reclaim not just time and energy, but influence over how your presence is perceived. Relationships transform as well. Some people will step back, unable to comprehend the new dynamic. Others will step forward, drawn to your integrity and consistency. They sense that you are no longer performing for them, and this rare authenticity commands respect. The superficial chatter fades. Conversations become fewer, but deeper. Engagements become meaningful because they are no longer about validating your choices. They are about connection with someone who stands independently. Even strangers react differently. When your behavior is no longer framed by constant justification, it carries weight. Decisions that might have been questioned endlessly are now observed quietly. People sense confidence, not arrogance, self-possession, not defiance. This subtle shift is almost imperceptible, yet profound. Your silence communicates far more than any explanation ever could. Schopenhauer's wisdom here is clear. Human beings are not equipped to fully understand one another. Explanations are often wasted, misinterpreted, or weaponized. To constantly justify yourself is to submit to this imperfection. But by stopping, you operate outside it. You create a space where your life is dictated by your values, not by the need to clarify, rationalize, or defend. And here is the final quiet irony. In refusing to explain, you paradoxically become easier to understand. Actions speak with clarity that words cannot convey. Integrity becomes visible. Boundaries become undeniable. And the world, in response, begins to adjust. Not by force, not by argument, but by recognition of your unshakable autonomy. When you stop explaining, you do not isolate yourself. You elevate yourself. You step into a life that is fiercely your own, and the world, eventually, cannot help but respond. By now, you may begin to see the pattern. Explaining yourself constantly is not merely tiring, it is corrosive. Schopenhauer would call it a surrender to human folly. Every word spent justifying your life to another is a small theft from your inner freedom. But when you stop, a profound shift occurs. The liberation is quiet, but absolute. Your decisions are no longer second-guessed. Your energy is no longer spent bending to the whims of others. And most importantly, your mind begins to breathe again. This is not about arrogance, nor about isolation. It is about clarity. When you act without justification, your life aligns with your values, not with the fleeting judgments of others. You realize that no amount of explanation can compel understanding from someone who cannot or does not wish to comprehend your inner reality. Freedom is not found in persuading the world. It is found in detachment from its demands, and the effects ripple outward. Your relationships take on a new quality. Those who matter will respect your boundaries. Those who do not will fade naturally. You become less reactive, less vulnerable to manipulation, less exhausted by the constant need for validation. The world begins to meet you on your terms, not because it owes you respect, but because you no longer surrender yourself to its whims. Schopenhauer's insight is harsh, but liberating. Life is too short and the world too chaotic to explain yourself endlessly. Every explanation given to please others is energy stolen from your purpose. Stop justifying, stop defending, stop offering yourself as a puzzle for others to solve. In that refusal, you reclaim the life that was always yours to live. And here is the ultimate truth. When you stop explaining, you do not become isolated. You become free. Free to think, free to act, free to create, free to live in a way that is authentic and undiluted by others' expectations. Freedom, once surrendered to the eyes and judgments of others, is regained in the simple, radical act of silence. So ask yourself, how much of your life have you spent explaining, defending, and justifying? How much energy have you given away for approval that never came? And how different would your life feel if, from this moment onward, you refuse to explain yourself unnecessarily? If this perspective resonates and you want to explore more ideas like this, deep, reflective, and psychologically transformative, then stay part of this journey. Subscribe and join a community of thinkers who refuse to surrender their minds to the world's endless demands. Let's uncover truth together, one insight at a time. Because life does not wait, and your freedom starts with a choice. Stop explaining. Start living.